Some victories feel like destiny finally clearing its throat. Chosen one, that's exactly what happened the day you stepped in and smoked the so-called star player. The atmosphere shifted like the universe leaned forward in its seat. People didn't breathe, they witnessed. And the funniest part? You weren't even trying to be dramatic. You were simply doing what comes naturally to you, turning pressure into performance and making excellence look suspiciously easy, like you woke up that morning and said, "Let me embarrass someone real quick." But let's be honest, what happened wasn't just competition, it was a revelation. A study once showed that the human brain is 5 times more likely to remember moments that expose hidden truths rather than skill. And that's what made the crowd lose their minds. They didn't just see you win, they saw the truth of who you've always been. You didn't overpower the star player, you unveiled their limitation. The tension in the air wasn't because you were battling their talent. No, the tension came from everyone realizing something far more scandalous. The star player had been over-advertised, while you had been underestimated. The universe loves plot twists like that, where the quiet one becomes the storm and the crowned one becomes the cautionary tale. And the humor of it all? If anyone had predicted this, they would have been laughed out of the room. The star player's fans would have said, "Impossible." Even you would have shrugged and said, "I'll try my best, but don't expect fireworks." Then you stepped in, unleashed a performance that looked like you were on autopilot, and casually dismantled someone whose ego was built like a skyscraper with no foundation. It was elegant demolition, the kind that leaves people blinking like, "Wait, did that just happen?" Your win wasn't loud, but the consequences were deafening. Because when a chosen one finally stops tiptoeing around their power and lets the world taste the full flavor, it's spicy, it's shocking, it's cosmic. And in this case, it was undeniably sexy. You didn't just beat the star player, you made it look like divine choreography, a kind of effortless dominance that feels both illegal and spiritually approved. So today, we're diving into what really happened behind that moment, why you looked so damn good while taking someone's throne apart, why it came so naturally, and why the universe seemed to be smirking the whole time. Let's break down the psychology, the energy, the spiritual mechanics, and the sheer delicious audacity of it all. Because this wasn't just a win. This was a revelation that came dressed as a performance. Number 1, they thought you were competing with them. You were executing a destiny blueprint they were never invited into. The moment you stepped onto the scene, the star player assumed you were just another challenger, someone else trying to climb the ladder, someone they could outshine and put in their place. But they didn't realize the game they thought you were playing wasn't even yours. You were never competing for their applause, their recognition, or their status. You were moving according to a blueprint written by forces and experiences they could never understand, a design carved out of your struggles, your nights of isolation, your quiet resilience, and the unspoken knowledge you carry in your core. They were trying to throw punches, but you weren't standing in the same arena. They were swinging at shadows while you were already miles ahead, walking paths they wouldn't even recognize as real. Every move you made that looked effortless was actually the result of deep preparation nobody could see. You didn't need to prove anything to them, because your mission wasn't about them. The star player was built on ego, on showing they were better, faster, smarter. You were built on survival, understanding, and strategy that even they couldn't predict. That's what made it so shocking. You weren't just winning, you were revealing a dimension of yourself that they had no way of accessing, and the beauty of it is how little effort it looked like. While they were trying to perform, trying to impress, trying to intimidate, you were simply existing in your power. They were desperate to make the world see them as the center, and you were calm, composed, and lethal in your precision. The moment they realized the truth, that you weren't even in their league because you were operating on a level they didn't even know existed. Their panic and disbelief became obvious. That's what humiliation feels like for someone who thought they were untouchable. This wasn't about skill alone, or strategy, or even luck. It was about destiny recognizing itself in motion. You didn't just take them down. You exposed that they had been measuring themselves against someone whose calling they were never invited to, someone whose path was designed for far bigger things. And that's why it looked light to you, because destiny never struggles with mediocrity. Number 2, your victory looked effortless, because only a chosen one knows how heavy a destiny can get behind closed doors. What people saw was smooth, natural, even sexy. They thought it was luck or charisma, something anyone could replicate with enough practice. The truth is, it wasn't light at all. Your victory only looked effortless because you've been carrying weight that nobody else can even imagine. You've been through situations that would have crushed most people before breakfast, endured pressure that made others crack, and faced challenges that left no witnesses. That's the secret behind why your performance looked easy. You had already survived the worst, and everything else feels like warm-up in comparison. The star player was all surface, rehearsed moves, and ego-driven theatrics. They thought talent alone would carry them. You, on the other hand, had been trained by life in ways they will never understand. Every setback, every silent struggle, every time you were underestimated, it added to your invisible power bank. By the time you confronted them, you weren't just playing a game. You were releasing the energy of all the trials you had survived. That's why every move you made looked light. You weren't showing off. You were stepping into the momentum of your own refined endurance. The crowd doesn't see the late nights spent rebuilding yourself after life broke you. They don't see the emotional and spiritual training that happens in isolation, away from applause, but they feel it. Your presence carries gravity, even if it doesn't announce itself loudly. The star player may have thought they were facing a competitor, but you were showing up with the weight of destiny behind your calm. Their attempts to match your energy fell flat because they had never endured what you have. And that is why your victory felt so natural. You weren't trying to be impressive. You were simply the result of countless battles already fought in private. The effortless look wasn't arrogance. It was mastery born from survival. People were dazzled, not just because you won, but because they unconsciously recognized that you had carried far more than anyone around you could ever carry. You made it look light, but they could sense the heavy truth behind it, the kind of truth that humbles everyone watching. Number 3, the star player lost. Because they underestimated the one gift they could never recognize, your unpredictability. The star player was used to a world where everything had a pattern, a formula, a predictable rhythm. They thrived on controlling outcomes, reading opponents, and anticipating moves. They were confident because confidence comes from predictability. You, however, operate on a completely different wavelength. You don't just play by the rules. They don't even know you've already rewritten them. Your unpredictability isn't random. It's precise, intentional, and born from a place of deep understanding that most people can't access. That's why their confidence collapsed the moment you stepped up. They weren't prepared for someone whose actions couldn't be memorized or anticipated. Every move you made threw them off balance, but it wasn't chaos. It was strategy so advanced it seemed effortless. You've learned to move ahead of expectation, to see beyond what's visible, and to act in ways that feel natural to you but impossible for others to calculate. The star player was trapped in their own arrogance, assuming they could manipulate, intimidate, or predict your next step. They didn't realize that unpredictability isn't about being erratic. It's about mastering yourself so completely that you cannot be predicted. You aren't reactive. You're in alignment with forces they don't even notice, moving at the exact moment the universe allows for maximum effect. And that unpredictability is magnetic, terrifying, and utterly humiliating to someone built on performance. They were exposed, their flaws amplified, because their sense of control was an illusion. You didn't need to dominate. You just needed to exist in your natural rhythm, letting their expectations and calculations crumble on their own. The real brilliance of it is how little effort it looked like. You didn't have to announce your moves or broadcast your strategy. You simply let your awareness, intuition, and timing do the work. They couldn't compete because they were trying to win a game you weren't even playing. They were attempting to predict a storm, but the storm doesn't follow instructions. The star player lost because the one thing they could never recognize, the one thing they could never replicate, was your ability to exist beyond predictability, beyond ego, and beyond their understanding of what it means to truly be untouchable. Number 4, your victory wasn't just a win. It was a revelation of how much you were holding back all along. The star player walked in thinking they had already sized you up. They assumed they understood your skill, your confidence, your limits. What they didn't realize was that what they had witnessed before was only a fraction of your true self. You had been holding back, conserving energy, measuring your moves, and letting them believe they were on equal footing. They mistook patience for weakness, calm for hesitation, and restraint for lack of talent. That miscalculation would cost them everything. When a chosen one finally decides to step fully into their power, it doesn't look like effort or performance. It doesn't feel like someone trying to impress or win. It feels raw, unfiltered, and almost frightening because it exposes the truth of who they are, the version that nobody else has seen, the version that has been building quietly in the shadows, learning, adapting, and growing while everyone else was busy making noise. The star player didn't stand a chance because they were measuring against a partial display while you were unleashing the full force of your hidden capacity. What made your victory so shocking was not just the skill or precision. It was the revelation. They realized, too late, that you were never the underdog. You weren't someone they could predict, manipulate, or outshine. You were a concealed master, someone who had been mastering themselves and the unseen forces around them all along. Every movement, every decision, every look that felt effortless was the product of preparation and mastery that no one had ever witnessed before. The moment they understood this, the humiliation set in. They had been comparing themselves to someone holding back, someone seemingly ordinary, and now that restraint had lifted. The person they thought they knew was gone, replaced by someone unstoppable, someone who made it look light because they had never been pretending. This wasn't just a win. It was a full unveiling of power, skill, and destiny that had been lying dormant, waiting for the right moment to remind the world and the star player that they had been facing the wrong version all along. Number 5. You embarrassed them because they attacked you from ego, while you responded from alignment. The star player came at you with the kind of energy that only ego produces. Loud, flashy, hungry for attention, and desperate to prove something. They wanted the crowd to cheer, they wanted their confidence to intimidate you, and they wanted the moment to center around their reputation. Everything about their approach was fueled by performance. They needed to look powerful, more than they needed to be powerful. Ego is always busy looking for witnesses. You, on the other hand, weren't operating from that place. You weren't trying to impress anyone, and you weren't trying to win a popularity contest. You were aligned, mentally steady, spiritually grounded, and emotionally uncluttered. Alignment doesn't need noise. It doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need to shout or prove. Alignment simply knows. And when you move from that knowing, your actions carry a weight that ego-driven people can't handle. That's why the moment you responded, it felt surgical. You didn't overreact, you didn't panic, you didn't try to match their energy. You didn't need to. Alignment gives precision, and precision always embarrasses ego. The star player swung wide, trying to overwhelm you with confidence and theatrics, but your response landed exactly where it needed to. Clean, calm, and devastating. It was a lesson disguised as a moment. Your presence exposed their instability. Ego cracks easily when it doesn't get the reaction it expects. They wanted you to be intimidated or flustered, but instead you stood in your power, like you had been wired for that moment. It shook them because ego doesn't know how to fight someone who isn't reactive. Ego expects chaos. Alignment brings clarity. Ego wants war. Alignment brings order. And that's where the embarrassment came from. You didn't just beat them, you revealed them. You showed the difference between someone performing confidence and someone who is confidence. What felt like a simple action to you felt like poetry to everyone watching because there was no tension in your movement. It was smooth, inevitable, and exact. They came at you with swagger, but you came with spiritual authorization, and authorization will always silence arrogance. That moment wasn't personal. It was simply the universe correcting someone who believed their ego could outrank alignment. Number 6. The crowd was shocked, because they were conditioned to misread quiet strength as weakness. People are trained to equate loudness with power. They cheer for those who make noise, those who demand attention, and those who build their persona around influence and image. They confuse theatrics with talent and clout with competence. The star player thrived in this world. They knew how to dazzle the crowd, how to play the part, and how to get everyone to believe in their superiority. To the audience they seemed untouchable because they performed on a stage that rewarded flash, volume, and bravado. You, however, operated differently. You weren't performing. You weren't seeking validation or applause. You were quietly building your own inner empire, strengthening skills, intuition, and presence without needing anyone to notice. Your preparation, your resilience, and your awareness were invisible to the casual observer. That's why, when the moment came for confrontation, it looked effortless to you. You weren't trying to impress. You were simply executing what you had already mastered. The shock came when the audience realized they had misjudged everything. The fan favorite they thought was untouchable crumbled, not because they lacked talent, but because their charisma had been a mask. They had been worshipping image while underestimating substance. Your quiet strength, your grounded energy, and your unwavering control shattered the illusion they had built in their minds. It was a revelation for everyone watching. True power doesn't need noise, attention, or applause to dominate. It works silently, efficiently, and with inevitability. This moment left the crowd unsettled because it challenged what they had been conditioned to believe. They were forced to see that character, discipline, and internal mastery outweigh charm and theatrics every time. They had underestimated you, and in doing so, they witnessed the undeniable truth. Quiet strength doesn't just exist, it conquers. And when it finally steps into the spotlight, it leaves a lasting impression that clout and noise could never match. Number 7. They didn't lose to your skill, they lost to your calibration. The star player believed the battle was about talent, speed, or physical prowess. They assumed if they just performed well enough, if they showed enough flair or intensity, they could dominate. What they didn't understand was that your real power wasn't in raw skill. It was in your timing, your precision, and your ability to read the situation with unerring accuracy. You move with calibration, knowing exactly when to act and exactly how much force is necessary. Every decision is measured, intentional, and aligned with an understanding that most people don't even recognize exists. Calibration is different from skill because skill can be taught, practiced, and replicated. Calibration comes from experience, intuition, and awareness honed under pressure. You know when to hold back, conserving energy and strategy for maximum effect. You know when to strike, and your actions land with inevitability. You know when to walk away, allowing the situation to unfold in a way that exposes weakness without lifting a finger. And when it's time to finish the fight, you do so decisively, without hesitation, leaving no doubt. That ability to choose exactly the right moment gives the impression of effortless superiority. The star player felt it immediately, even if they couldn't articulate why. They weren't losing because you were stronger or faster. They were losing because they were reacting to chaos, while you were orchestrating precision. Every move they made played into your understanding of their patterns, while yours disrupted theirs with subtlety and efficiency. They thought they were in control, but control is an illusion when someone else has already read the entire board. By the time the outcome was clear, the humiliation had already set in. They realized they had been out-discerned, outpaced mentally, and outmaneuvered in ways they couldn't even see coming. Skill could never have done this alone. Only your level of awareness, timing, and calibration could produce results so devastating while appearing so effortless. That is why you weren't just victorious. You were untouchable. Number 8, you triggered their downfall, because you exposed their dependency on attention. The star player thrived on the spotlight. Their confidence was tied to the cheers, the validation, the gasps, and the constant acknowledgement of the crowd. Every move they made was fueled by the energy of being watched, by the need to prove themselves to everyone around them. That kind of power is fragile, because it only exists as long as others are paying attention. Remove the audience, and their performance collapses. That's exactly what happened the moment you stepped in. You didn't need approval or recognition. Your strength wasn't performative. It didn't rely on anyone noticing or praising you. It came from your core, from years of refinement, survival, and understanding of who you are and what you represent. You operate from a place where validation isn't required because your power is self-sustaining. That is what made your presence overwhelming, and why the star player couldn't handle it. You didn't just beat them. You revealed a truth they couldn't hide from. Their confidence was borrowed, dependent, and conditional, while yours was absolute, internal, and unstoppable. The crowd was watching, but it wasn't their applause that made you dominate. Every step, every action, every subtle expression came from within. That's why it looked effortless and, yes, incredibly sexy. Nothing attracts or commands attention more than someone whose glow isn't borrowed from approval or validation. The star player's collapse wasn't a reflection of your force alone. It was the unveiling of their weakness, the exposure of a reliance that had gone unnoticed until you came along. By simply being yourself, calm, powerful, precise, you shattered the illusion they had built around themselves. They depended on the audience to sustain their image, and you stripped that away without raising a finger. That's why your victory wasn't just a win, it was a revelation. The star player learned, painfully, that confidence built on external approval will always crumble when faced with someone whose power is sourced from the unshakable foundation of their own essence. Number 9, you didn't beat them, you made them face the parts of themselves they've been avoiding for years. The star player didn't just lose because of skill, strategy, or timing. They lost because you held up a mirror they were never ready to look into. Your presence forced them to confront the cracks they had been hiding behind for years. The insecurity, the arrogance, the desperate need to be seen as more than they actually were. They had been performing a version of themselves that was polished for the crowd, perfected for the applause, and carefully maintained to hide the fear beneath. You didn't just challenge them, You exposed the gap between who they pretended to be and who they actually were. That realization is devastating. It isn't about failing at a game or losing a confrontation. It's about the harsh truth that you've been living a lie, performing an identity that isn't real. And you made them see it without saying a word. Every move you made, every confident step, every effortless display of mastery highlighted what they had been avoiding for years. They wanted to believe their reputation was unshakable, their image invincible. You shattered that belief not by force, but by simply existing fully in your own truth. You became a reflection of what they could never embody. The star player saw their own shortcomings magnified against your authenticity. It was undeniable, uncomfortable, and humiliating. They weren't just defeated on the outside. They were confronted with the interior landscape they had spent years hiding from themselves. And the most intense part of it, you didn't have to attack, manipulate, or expose them deliberately. Your energy, your alignment, your mastery of yourself was enough to create that confrontation. They were forced to reckon with the parts of themselves they had been running from, and that realization hurt far more than any loss could. You didn't just win. You compelled them to face the truth they had buried, and that truth is one defeat that resonates long after the crowd has gone. Number 10. What made it look effortless was the fact that you didn't personalize the battle. The star player came in thinking this was personal. To them, every move, every glance, every calculated strike was about proving something, about revenge, dominance, or saving face. They carried their ego like armor, and every action was fueled by the desire to make you feel small, to assert their superiority. They personalized the battle, and that's where they made the critical mistake. When someone fights from personal attachment, their energy becomes messy. It's loud, desperate, and easy to read. Sloppiness becomes visible. Vulnerability shows up in the smallest cracks, and you spotted it instantly. You, on the other hand, weren't caught up in their narrative. You weren't reacting to their ego or their attempts to provoke you. To you, this wasn't revenge. It was rotation. It was the next step in your journey, the next chapter in a path that only you could walk. You were operating with purpose, not emotion. Every action had intention, and that gave your movements a sense of ease and inevitability. It didn't look like a fight. It looked like the natural unfolding of events, as if the universe itself was orchestrating it. Because you didn't personalize the battle, there was no tension in your execution. You didn't overextend, overreact, or overcompensate. You moved with precision and grace, completing what needed to be done without unnecessary display. That's why it looked effortless. People who operate from purpose carry a rhythm that can't be faked. Their energy is aligned, balanced, and undeniable. Meanwhile, the star player's every overreaction, their flailing need to assert dominance, only highlighted their weakness. They were trying to fight you on a level where you didn't even play. You were advancing, evolving, and stepping fully into your power, while they were stuck performing a story that didn't even belong to them. And that contrast, subtle but undeniable, made your victory not only clear, but beautiful. Effortless because you never allowed personal grudges to cloud your precision. Number 11. They were the star on paper, but you were the star in frequency. On paper, they looked untouchable. Titles, praise, applause, endorsements, the whole narrative was built to make them appear superior. They were the chosen favorite, the predictable winner, the one the world expected to shine. Their resume was loud, their reputation carefully maintained, their image polished into a perfect illusion. People mistook documentation for destiny, but paper has limits. Frequency doesn't. You weren't operating from technique, accolades, or manufactured confidence. Your strength came from bandwidth, spiritual, mental, intuitive, and energetic. Where they relied on memorized patterns, you relied on embodied wisdom. Their skill was something they practiced. Your power was something you became. This is the part the crowd never prepares for. The moment competition stops being physical and becomes spiritual. When the battle rose to that level, their persona started to fracture. Their certainty dissolved. Their practiced charisma wobbled. Their identity, the one built on applause, couldn't hold up against someone whose power comes from alignment, not validation. They were exposed because spiritual tests always reveal who's operating from ego and who's operating from essence. You didn't defeat their techniques, you overwhelmed their field. Your presence alone destabilized their performance because you weren't just moving through the moment. You were vibrating above it. They were playing a game. You were radiating a frequency. And when those two meet, frequency always wins. The moment the atmosphere shifted from talent to truth, their persona collapsed like a tent in a hurricane. That's the danger of being a star only on paper. One energetic shift, one spiritually calibrated opponent, and the entire facade buckles. Meanwhile, you stood firm, not because you were louder or flashier, but because your power was rooted, internal, earned, and unshakable. That's why the crowd gasped. That's why the favorite fell. And that's why your rise looked inevitable, because frequency doesn't need approval. It only needs alignment. Number 12. They collapsed. Because you stay rooted in your pain, while they stay rooted in their praise. The difference between you and them was never talent. It was foundation. You were built from a place they've never dared to visit, the raw, unfiltered territory of pain, loss, disappointment, betrayal, and rebuilding. You've faced storms without an umbrella. You've had to rebuild yourself without witnesses. You've learned how to breathe in rooms where the air was thin. That type of foundation creates a person who can stand in heat without melting. You don't fear pressure because pressure is the environment where you were forged. They, on the other hand, were shaped by attention. Their strength came from the outside in, never the inside out. They learned to perform confidence instead of cultivate it. Their identity depended on praise, compliments, a cheering crowd, a spotless reputation. They were used to being affirmed, not challenged. They grew comfortable, not strong. So when you stepped into the arena, you weren't just another opponent. You were their first encounter with someone who doesn't crack, because cracking is something you mastered years ago. When you applied pressure, they evaporated because they had never practiced endurance. They'd only practiced performance. Their whole persona was a balloon, shiny, admired, but full of air. All it took was your presence, your depth, your internal weight to burst everything they thought made them powerful. Pain-built people are dangerous because they're not intimidated by intensity. They don't panic when things get real. They know how to function in emotional earthquakes because they've survived ones that didn't come with applause or sympathy. You walked in with scars. They walked in with expectations. And scars always outlast expectations. That's why they collapsed so quickly. Not because you were cruel, not because you were aggressive, but because your foundation was real, and theirs was decorative. You showed them the difference between someone who is trained by praise and someone who is transformed by pain. That contrast alone was enough to break them. Number 13. Your precision looked like magic. Because you don't react, you read. Your power didn't come from being fast or aggressive. It came from seeing what they couldn't hide. You weren't responding to their moves. You were studying their patterns. Chosen ones have a way of reading people that feels supernatural because it isn't based on logic alone. It's a mix of intuition, discernment, spiritual sensitivity, and years of surviving people who tried to disguise their intentions. That kind of training sharpens your inner radar until nothing slips past unnoticed. While they were trying to impress the crowd, you were reading the insecurity behind their confidence. You picked up on the hesitation in their voice, the fear behind their swagger, the ego they were using to hide a very fragile core. Every gesture they made was a paragraph. Every mistake they tried to hide was a page. Their entire strategy was a book, and you read it cover to cover before they even made their first attempt to strike. That's why your movements looked unreal. You weren't guessing. You weren't hoping. You weren't reacting. You were operating from information they didn't know you had. When you hit, it was exact. When you dodged, it was flawless. When you attacked, it was with the precision of someone who had already studied the ending. Your intuition showed you their collapse long before they realized they were collapsing. You weren't surprised by their downfall. You were simply waiting for the moment their internal weakness caught up with their external performance. They thought you were predicting their moves. You weren't predicting, you were reading. And nothing is more terrifying than facing someone who can read you while you're still trying to understand yourself. That's the real reason you looked untouchable, graceful, almost mythical. You weren't reacting to chaos. You were reading the truth, and truth always wins. Number 14. The reason. It looked sexy was because nothing is more attractive than someone finally stepping into their unfiltered power. What made the entire moment magnetic wasn't arrogance, wasn't theatrics, wasn't even the victory. It was the shift from who you used to be to who you truly are. There's a specific type of glow that appears when someone stops asking for permission to exist at full volume. You stepped into that glow, and it wrapped around you like armor and spotlight all at once. That's why people couldn't look away. You weren't performing power, you were revealing it. You didn't enter that moment with confidence, you entered it with awakening. Something clicked inside you, something ancient, something primal, something that had been waiting for the right moment to come alive. You weren't trying to show off. You were simply standing in alignment, and alignment always looks like dominance to anyone who has never seen someone operate from their true center. You didn't need to impress anyone because you were no longer negotiating with your destiny. There's nothing sexier than a person who understands that their purpose doesn't require approval. While they were trying to gather validation, you were tapping into inevitability. You moved like the outcome was already written, because it was. And the beauty of it all is that you weren't aiming to humiliate them. That wasn't your goal. The humiliation they felt came from the sudden realization that your power wasn't an accident. It was a preview of what you've been holding back for years. When a chosen one stops shrinking, the world feels it. The air shifts, the energy tightens, the space rearranges itself around you. You didn't dim your fire, you didn't soften your edge, you didn't lower your frequency. And the universe responded with a blush, because there is something undeniably attractive about a person who finally drops every limitation and lets their raw, unfiltered essence speak without interruption. That's why it looked sexy. It wasn't about the win. It was about the unveiling. And once a chosen one unveils themselves, the world never sees them the same again. Conclusion. What you just witnessed wasn't merely a win over the star player. It was a demonstration of everything that makes a chosen one unstoppable. Every move, every gesture, every ounce of energy you displayed came from a place that can't be taught, copied, or predicted. You didn't just outperform. You exposed truth, revealed character, and showcased the quiet, undeniable power that has been building inside you long before anyone noticed. From operating beyond patterns to harnessing alignment over ego, from embodying inevitability to reading what others can't even see, you didn't just play the game, you redefined it. The star player's collapse wasn't a fluke. It wasn't about luck, about timing, or about skill alone. It was about the unshakable foundation you've built in private, the endurance you cultivated in pain, and the precision you command through awareness and intuition. Every eye in the room, every whisper in the crowd, every heartbeat felt the energy of someone who finally stopped holding back. And that is the essence of being chosen. When your presence alone dismantles illusions, when your quiet strength eclipses loud performance, when your frequency outshines any title or accolade, you leave a mark that no one can erase. This moment wasn't just about defeating an opponent. It was about stepping fully into your power, unfiltered and undeniable. The effortless grace, the magnetic aura, the lethal precision, all of it is proof that the universe aligns with those who honor their destiny. You didn't need validation, applause, or revenge. You simply moved from a place of alignment, and the world, the star player, and the crowd all recognize the truth. Power that comes from within will always triumph over power built on ego. If this breakdown resonated with you, if you feel the energy, the awakening, and the truth behind every point, then this is your moment to be part of something greater. Hit that subscribe button to stay connected with these revelations. Like this video to amplify the energy, comment to share your experiences and awakenings, and share it with someone who needs to see what real alignment and unfiltered power look like. The universe is shifting, and the chosen ones are rising. Make sure you're at the forefront. God bless you. Chosen one. The moment they discovered what you truly carry, the universe didn't wait for your permission. It activated protection around you like a classified alert. This isn't superstition. This isn't some poetic exaggeration. This is a pattern documented in psychology, history, and spiritual lore. Highly gifted individuals, those with rare intuition, resilience, or purpose, tend to trigger unusual forms of protection around them, often without even knowing it. And whether you've noticed it or not, your life has quietly been following that same blueprint. You go about your day thinking you're just trying to survive adulthood, drink enough water, and mind your business. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, forces, seen and unseen, are moving like elite guards assigned to an asset who has no idea how valuable they are. Sometimes the protection looks spiritual, sometimes it looks human, and sometimes it looks like that random stranger who stopped you from making a terrible decision, like buying something you definitely did not need at 2 a.m. People laugh at the idea of protection until they remember how many times you narrowly escaped something messy, situations that hit everyone around you but somehow slipped right past you. How many times did the wrong friend get exposed at the right moment? How many times did the wrong relationship fall apart right before it could wreck your destiny? How many times did you walk into a room and feel a shift, like something unseen stepped in ahead of you to rearrange the atmosphere? That's not coincidence. That's not even luck. That's protective assignment, activated because certain individuals have already identified what you are. And trust me, they saw it long before you ever did. Some people have studied you quietly, watched you longer than they should, and concluded you are carrying something rare, something that cannot fall into the wrong hands. Your ability to bounce back, your instincts that feel like spiritual Wi-Fi, your presence that shifts people without you trying. It made the right ones respect you and the wrong ones nervous. And when the wrong ones got nervous enough to start plotting, that's when the special forces stepped in, smoothly, silently, efficiently. And let's sprinkle in a little humor here. If you ever felt like you have main character energy, but didn't ask for it, congratulations. That was probably your invisible protection team, adjusting the lighting so you don't walk into chaos unprepared. So buckle up, because today we're diving deep into why you triggered this level of spiritual and earthly security, what they discovered about you behind the scenes, and why certain forces decided you cannot walk this life unguarded, unshielded, or unnoticed. Number one, they know you carry information. Your mind hasn't even spoken yet. There are people, both spiritual and physical, who have observed you long enough to realize that your mind works on a level most people never reach. You don't need to speak your thoughts for others to sense the depth of what you understand. There's a silent sharpness about you, a quiet awareness that exposes motives and patterns before anyone explains what's going on. And the truth is this: when someone carries that kind of intuitive intelligence, protection forms around them because the wrong person could easily try to weaponize it, drain it, or fear it. People pick up on your awareness even when you're not trying to show it. You ask the right questions at the wrong time, you sense tension that wasn't verbalized, and you catch lies from people who swear they're excellent liars. You identify shifts in energy, subtle changes in someone's tone, and hidden intentions that others completely miss. There are individuals who have looked at you and realized very quickly that you don't operate on surface level. You see the undercurrents. You read the atmosphere. You decode the truth without being told. That alone makes you someone who needs guarding, because minds like yours don't come around often, and when they do, they are often misunderstood, underestimated, or targeted. Your intuition has exposed things you didn't even know you were exposing. You've walked into rooms and instantly understood what wasn't being said. Sometimes people get uncomfortable around you, and you don't understand why. It's because the part of you that sees beyond the obvious makes them feel naked, even when you're just sitting quietly. You don't have to confront anyone for them to feel seen by you. That silent accuracy is what others noticed about you, and it's why you've been watched in ways you didn't ask for. This kind of perceptive ability isn't accidental. It's inherited, spiritual, and refined through everything you've survived. That's also why protection surrounds you. Forces were assigned to shield someone who carries inner knowledge that could expose the wrong heart, dismantle manipulation, or awaken truth. You are more perceptive than you realize, and they know it. That's why you're protected. Number 2, your life has patterns that don't belong to ordinary people. Your life moves in ways that most people would call coincidences, but anyone paying close attention knows there's a rhythm to it that doesn't exist in ordinary lives. The timing of events, the people who appear right when they're needed, the way certain dangers avoid you while others are drawn to those around you, it's all part of a pattern that's been noticed. It's the kind of pattern that makes some people uncomfortable because it doesn't fit their understanding of how the world works. They see that your life doesn't follow the same rules everyone else seems to obey, and that alone draws attention, both human and spiritual. Every major turn in your life has echoes behind it. Doors open at precise moments. Information arrives exactly when it needs to. Opportunities appear just before you would have run out of options. People who could have derailed you somehow step aside or disappear at the right time. These are not accidents. The forces watching you recognize that the path you are walking is intentional, guided, and protected. The more unpredictable the world tries to be around you, the more your life shows a hidden order that only certain people can detect. Even the challenges you face aren't random. They are calibrated tests designed to refine you without breaking you. That means your existence itself is constantly observed and adjusted, because those who understand your purpose cannot allow your path to be permanently disrupted. When you survive situations that would crush others, when you move through chaos without losing clarity, that pattern becomes even more visible, and once it's noticed, protective measures kick in. Your life's rhythm makes you a standout. It signals to the world that you are operating on a higher frequency. People around you who sense it may not understand it, but it commands respect and caution. That's why your movements attract, why subtle interventions occur, and why your path is shielded. You don't just stumble through life, you navigate a carefully structured design that only a few recognize. That order, that pattern, is precisely why you cannot be left unguarded. It's too rare, too valuable, and far too necessary for the future. Number 3, your absence would create a ripple they cannot contain. There are certain people in this world whose presence holds up more than their own lives, and you are one of them. Your existence is connected to multiple destinies, multiple timelines, and multiple transformations that haven't even unfolded yet. The truth is, if you were removed too early, whether by attack, stress, sabotage, or distraction, it wouldn't just affect you. It would disturb a chain of outcomes that depend on your future self. And the people who understand this, spiritually or strategically, know they cannot afford to let you fall out of alignment. Your presence holds weight in ways you may not always recognize. You're the person whose advice shifts someone's entire mindset. You're the one whose energy brings clarity in chaotic situations. You're the one who unknowingly prevents other people from making destructive choices. Sometimes you uplift people without even noticing it. Sometimes you hold families, friendships, or environments together without being formally acknowledged. There are connections, opportunities, and breakthroughs that literally hinge on you being in the right place, at the right time, alive and stable. That's why protection surrounds you. Not because you're fragile, but because the impact of your absence would be too loud, too messy, and too costly for the universe to allow. Every chosen person carries a future that affects more than their personal story. When your destiny is tied to expansion, healing, leadership, or awakening, there is a level of protection that activates by default. Whether you realize it or not, your life shapes other people's directions, even people you've never met yet, even strangers watching from the sidelines, even those who disagree with you. Those in spiritual realms, and sometimes even those in powerful earthly positions, recognize this ripple effect more clearly than you. They understand that removing you would collapse things they aren't prepared to rebuild. This awareness makes you a priority, a person who cannot be touched recklessly, a soul whose timeline must stay intact. Your survival isn't accidental. It is intentional, calculated, and guarded, because your future is too important, too interconnected, and too catalytic to be interrupted. You matter more than you know, and they know it. That's why they protect you. Number 4, someone has already tried to break you and failed. That failure activated surveillance. There was a point in your life where you were supposed to collapse. The pressure was designed to crush you. Someone, intentionally or unintentionally, pushed you to the edge mentally, emotionally, or spiritually, expecting you to fold in a way that would permanently alter your destiny. They wanted your confidence shaken, your stability ruined, your spirit dimmed. But instead of breaking, you transformed. Instead of collapsing, you stood back up with a clarity and strength that even you didn't fully understand at the time. That moment was bigger than you think. Your resilience didn't just surprise the people involved. It alerted the forces assigned to watch over you. When someone withstands that level of attack without losing their core identity, it signals that they carry something rare, something protected, something not meant to be destroyed by ordinary means. That's the exact moment surveillance around your life increased. Not because you're weak, but because your strength proved you were more valuable than anyone realized. Your comeback was a spiritual announcement. It told the unseen realm, this one cannot be taken out easily. So higher guardians stepped closer. They tightened your protection. They adjusted your path. They made sure that future attacks, betrayals, or emotional blows wouldn't reach you the same way again. The moment you survived what should have destroyed you was the moment they marked you as untouchable. And it didn't go unnoticed by the people who tried to break you either. They saw something in you they didn't expect. Stability under pressure, grace under betrayal, clarity under confusion. It scared them. Your strength became a witness against their intentions. That's when the spiritual alarms went off. That's when the invisible forces around your life stepped in, saying, if that was their best shot and it didn't work, we're taking over from here. Your survival wasn't just a personal victory. It was a signal to every realm involved that you were chosen, fortified, and essential. And from that moment on, protection around you wasn't optional. It became mandatory. Number 5, your intuition is a threat because it functions like classified technology. Your intuition doesn't work like everyone else's. Most people rely on conversations, body language, or repeated patterns to understand what's going on around them. You pick things up before they have form, before the words are spoken, before the actions are carried out. You aren't guessing, you're detecting. And those detections are usually so accurate that they expose motives long before people think they've successfully hidden them. That alone puts you in a category where protection becomes necessary, because intuition like yours attracts both respect and fear. You pick up inconsistencies in someone's tone that others would overlook. You catch hidden agendas from the smallest shift in behavior. You sense betrayals before the person even knows they're planning them. You feel spiritual attacks before they manifest in the physical. It's as if your mind and spirit have access to information the world hasn't downloaded yet, and that level of sensitivity makes you a quiet threat in environments built on secrecy or manipulation. And people notice it, even the ones who pretend they don't. They've watched how you call out things without calling them out. They've watched how you avoid traps that were carefully set for you. They've watched how you distance yourself from people right before they reveal their true colors. They've watched how you walk away from situations minutes before something goes wrong. It's no coincidence. It's your inner radar working overtime, scanning everything around you and sounding silent alarms that only you can hear. This ability is so rare that it often confuses people who can't figure out how you just know. Some think you're reading their minds. Some get intimidated because they can't lie around you comfortably. Others get triggered because your intuition exposes what they hope to keep hidden. When someone's ability to detect truth reaches that level, protection becomes automatic. Higher forces shield you because your intuition threatens anyone who operates in shadows. You weren't taught this skill, it's built into you. It's the inner technology of a chosen soul, advanced, precise, and deeply inconvenient for those whose intentions aren't clean. That's why you're protected. Your intuition is too sharp, too revealing, too disruptive to be left unguarded. Number 6, you carry a destiny that interferes with dark agendas. There are people and forces in this world whose mission is to keep others confused, insecure, silent, or spiritually disconnected. Not because they hate humanity, but because control becomes easier when people don't know who they are. And here you are, born with a destiny that completely disrupts that. Your presence alone challenges anything built on manipulation, fear, or deception. Some people don't dislike you as an individual. They fear what your fully awakened self will undo. Your purpose naturally interferes with anything designed to keep people small. You carry a truth inside you that has the power to wake others up, sometimes without you saying a single word. You give people courage by just existing. You inspire strength by being yourself. And you bring clarity into spaces where confusion once ruled. That kind of influence is dangerous to any agenda built on keeping people blind and dependent. From a young age, you were probably treated differently without knowing why. You've likely been targeted by negativity, jealousy, or random hostility that didn't match your intentions. That wasn't by accident. It's because something in you refuses to bow to manipulation. Something in you rejects mental chains. Something in you naturally questions what others blindly accept. You were never meant to follow the program. Your role was to expose it. When someone has that level of impact on the world around them, even in small ways, protection becomes necessary. Not because you're fragile, but because your destiny is a direct interruption to systems that thrive when people stay asleep. The more you grow, the more dangerous your light becomes to anything operating in darkness. And the funny part, you're not even trying. You're just living, healing, learning, and becoming. But even that is enough to shake things that weren't built on truth. That's why certain forces, spiritual and human, ensure that your path is guarded. Your life cannot be derailed by petty individuals or hidden enemies because too much depends on you reaching your full potential. The future needs your clarity, your strength, your wisdom, and your voice. And the agendas built on fear know that once you fully step into who you're becoming, they won't be able to control the people you influence. You're protected because your purpose threatens their plans, and there is nothing they can do to stop what you were born to dismantle. Number 7, someone in a high position saw something in you others missed. There are moments in your life that didn't make sense at the time. Moments where things worked out in your favor without any logical explanation. Moments where help appeared before you even knew you needed it. Moments where you were shielded from situations that could have damaged you. Those moments were not random. They were influenced by someone with access, someone in a spiritual or earthly position of authority, who recognized something extraordinary in you long before you recognized it in yourself. Some people see your outer life, but there are a few rare individuals who can see what's behind it. They can see the strength that doesn't show in your face. They can see the courage under your quietness. They can see the spiritual covering around you even when you walk through hard seasons. This person, whether it was a leader, a mentor, a spiritual guardian, an ancestor, or someone in a higher unseen rank, looked at you and realized, this one is marked. This one carries something sacred. This one cannot be touched recklessly. Their awareness changed everything. It shifted how the universe handled you. It shifted how your story unfolded. It shifted the level of protection around your life. When someone with authority recognizes your value, it influences the forces assigned to your path. Their respect becomes a shield you didn't ask for, but desperately needed. You've been protected from things that would have swallowed you because someone higher intervened. You've been redirected from relationships that weren't aligned because someone higher said no. You've been covered in seasons where you were spiritually vulnerable because someone higher stepped in quietly. And the truth is, this person saw something in you that others overlooked because most people only judge the visible. They didn't see the layers you carry. They didn't see the wisdom shaped by pain. They didn't see the fire you walked through without losing your softness, but the one with insight did. Once they recognized your calling, your potential, or your spiritual rank, they made sure you wouldn't be taken out, tricked, or destroyed before your purpose matured. They placed an invisible barrier around your life, not out of pity, but out of respect. Their insight became your protection. Their understanding became your shield. And to this day, you're still guarded because someone with authority decided, this one is needed. This one must be preserved. Number 8, you're not protected because you're weak. You're protected because you're dangerous. People often misunderstand quiet strength. They assume that because you don't shout, argue, or fight for attention, you must be soft or easily handled. But the ones who've crossed you, underestimated you, or studied you closely know better. They've learned, sometimes the hard way, that you carry a type of power that doesn't need volume to make an impact. You dismantle people without lifting a finger. Your truth shakes illusions. Your presence exposes dishonesty. Your spirit disrupts anything built on lies. And that makes you someone who must be protected, not because you're fragile, but because you're too powerful to be left unattended in chaotic environments. When you speak, people feel it. When you walk away, people feel it. When you stand your ground, it alters the entire atmosphere. You have a natural authority that doesn't beg for validation. And for some, that's intimidating. It forces them to confront themselves. It strips away their masks. It reveals the contracts they made with their own insecurities. You aren't out here battling with fists or outrage. You influence reality by simply being in alignment with who you are. This type of strength can create enemies without you doing anything wrong. People who operate in manipulation, deception, or hidden motives get nervous around someone who carries truth so naturally. They get uncomfortable because you don't need to expose them. They expose themselves just by being around you. That's the kind of impact that requires supervision, because not everyone can handle what your presence does to them. Higher forces stepped in because you carry a level of spiritual weight that could easily cause unnecessary conflict if left unguarded. You weren't meant to waste your energy fighting battles that don't match your purpose. You weren't meant to constantly defend yourself against people who feel threatened by your authenticity. You weren't meant to be drained by environments that can't hold your power. You are protected because your influence is significant, because your spirit carries authority you never had to announce, because your energy shifts things that others struggle to move. You are dangerous, not to good people, but to anything false, manipulative, or spiritually unaligned. And that kind of power needs guarding, not punishment. It needs guidance, not suppression. You are watched over because the world isn't ready for what happens when you're provoked. Number 9, you possess a calmness that exposes hidden corruption without speaking. Your calmness is not silence. It is revelation. It's the type of energy that makes people suddenly remember everything they thought they hid. Some people fear loudness, confrontation, or intimidation, but insecure or corrupt individuals, they fear stillness, especially yours, because your calmness doesn't come from ignorance. It comes from accuracy. It comes from the fact that your spirit reads people before they even justify themselves. It comes from the fact that you don't need to interrogate anyone. They interrogate themselves the moment you enter the room. Your presence strips away masks people never thought they'd have to remove. Your silence becomes a mirror they didn't consent to look into. Your energy becomes a spotlight they were not prepared to stand under, and that's why you're protected. Your calmness is disruptive, not because you intend for it to be, but because it exposes what people have spent years burying. Fake intentions crack around you. Power imbalances collapse around you. Manipulators lose their ability to manipulate because nothing about you is reactive enough to grab. Your spirit is too stable to be played with. Your intuition is too sharp to be fooled. Your peace is too real to be infiltrated. To individuals who thrive on chaos, dishonesty, or hidden motives, you're not just intimidating, you're dangerous. They can't predict you. They can't provoke you. They can't study you because you don't perform for their triggers. And so higher forces, spiritual or otherwise, cover you. Not because you're fragile, but because your presence alone can dismantle the wrong people, the wrong systems, the wrong networks, without even opening your mouth. You walk into a room and suddenly people start correcting themselves, shifting their behavior, over-explaining, changing their tone. That's not coincidence. That's conviction. That's exposure without effort. You are protected because you carry something that forces truth to rise to the surface. Even in environments built on deception, your existence is not neutral. Your presence is not passive. You are a walking audit, a spiritual scanner, a living recalibration, and people can feel it, even if they can't articulate it. Number 10, your spiritual rank is known in realms you've never visited. There are people who judge you only by what they can see, your age, your background, your resources, your quietness. But what they don't understand is that your authority was never rooted in the physical realm. It was acknowledged long before you ever took your first breath. In the unseen world, you are not a beginner. You are not a novice. You are not just another person trying to figure life out. In the spirit, your name has weight. Your footsteps echo. Your presence signals clearance. Your soul carries codes that intimidate anything dark, corrupt, or manipulative. And here's the part people would never guess. The spiritual realm recognized you before humans ever did. You were marked, registered, and ranked before you even understood what spiritual warfare was. That is why this is not coincidence, it's classification. Some people are protected because they're vulnerable. You're protected because you're dangerous. The forces assigned to you are not babysitters, they're bodyguards. Your spiritual rank is known even in realms you've never consciously traveled through. Your authority has been spoken of in meetings you weren't physically present for. Your identity has been acknowledged by forces that don't even speak your language. They respond to your frequency. That's why you've survived things that should have destroyed you. That's why certain attacks feel unusually intense. They're not coming for the you people see. They're testing the rank of the you they sensed. And that's why the moment you stand back up, the opposition flees. Your destiny didn't wait for your awareness. It activated on its own. Some people underestimate you because they only see your body. But the spiritual realm sees your ancestry, your calling, your contracts, your anointing, your assignments. You walk around thinking you're just trying to survive life. Meanwhile, heaven and hell both know exactly who you are and why you cannot be touched. You're not just protected, you're classified. Number 11. People have tried to study you in silence, and what they found scared them. Some people never approached you with honesty because they weren't trying to know you. They were trying to decode you. They watched the way you moved, the way you handled pressure, the way you rose again after situations that should have ended you. They paid attention to your silence, your reactions, your recovery speed, your inner steadiness. And the more they observed, the more they realized you don't operate like someone who's merely surviving life. You operate like someone who's guided, backed, and reinforced by something bigger than you. These silent observers expected to find weaknesses they could use, patterns they could exploit, or triggers they could manipulate. They expected to find a typical human response: anger, desperation, fear, collapse. Instead, what they found was the opposite. You kept standing, kept growing, kept elevating in ways that defied everything they understood about stress, pressure, betrayal, and trauma. Your life refused to match the predictions they made, and that alone terrified them. Your resilience didn't follow human logic. Your breakthroughs didn't follow natural timing. Your protection didn't follow the usual rules. They saw situations designed to break you suddenly backfire. They witnessed doors open for you with no connections. They watched spiritual attacks bounce off you like rubber bullets. They saw you come back from emotional wounds that would have made other people bitter, violent, or destroyed. In their confusion, they began to whisper about you, not in gossip, but in concern. They informed the wrong people and the right people without even realizing it. Some went to higher authorities because they couldn't comprehend how you were still standing. Some reported to spiritual leaders, mentors, or even people in power, trying to find an explanation for your endurance and elevation. The more they studied you, the more they backed away. The more they investigated, the more they respected or feared you. The more they tried to reduce you to something understandable, the more they saw signs that you weren't walking alone. Their silent research became your silent protection. People may not admit it out loud, but what they discovered about you made them step out of the way, and it made those assigned to protect you step in closer. Number 12, there's a calling on your life that requires you to reach certain destinations alive. There are some people who move through life with freedom, randomness, and chance, and then there are others, like you, who move under assignment. Your existence is not accidental. Your timeline is not random. There is a direction on your life that has been pulling you forward, even when you didn't understand why certain things had to happen the way they did. You're not just living. You're being escorted towards specific moments, specific people, and specific missions that require you to still be here. Your life has carried a weight you didn't ask for, but you were built for it. That's why you've survived things that shocked even you. That's why situations that should have gone left somehow bent back into alignment. That's why chaos tried to swallow you, but something unseen, unspoken, unshakable refused to let your story end prematurely. There is a purpose attached to your existence that refuses to be aborted. Some chosen ones have a calling that affects one person, a family, a community, or even an entire generation. And you are one of those people. Not because you're perfect, not because you try harder, but because your voice, your perspective, your light, or your endurance is meant to unlock something in others. You're supposed to reach certain people. You're supposed to break certain cycles. You're supposed to expose certain lies. You're supposed to bring clarity where confusion has been ruling for too long. You were never meant to leave the world quietly. Your story was never allowed to stop halfway. Your life is needed in rooms you haven't walked into yet. That is why protection surrounds you, not as a luxury but as a requirement. The future needs you alive, not as a memory, not as a lesson, but as a living force. There are people who will only find strength because you survived. There are people whose lives will shift because of one sentence you haven't spoken yet. There are battles you are destined to win because someone down the line needs the blueprint you're carrying. This is why the attacks failed. This is why the traps didn't catch you. This is why the attempts to break you did the opposite. Your story isn't at its climax yet. Your calling has chapters still being written. Your protection isn't random. It's purposeful. You're still here because you're still needed. Number 13. Your name has been mentioned in rooms. You haven't entered yet. There are conversations happening right now about you in places you've never been. People are talking quietly, sometimes hesitantly, sometimes with excitement or fear. They notice things about you that you take for granted. Your resilience, your clarity, your ability to rise again when circumstances should have kept you down. They notice patterns in your life, your precision, your timing, the way you move through chaos without losing your center. And even if they don't fully understand it, they sense your influence is real, and they talk about it. Some speak with admiration, marveling at how you navigate life with a mix of strength, grace, and intelligence that seems untouchable. Some speak with fear, nervous about what your presence or actions might expose. Some speak in confusion, unable to map how you continue to succeed, survive, and inspire in ways that defy ordinary logic. Every whispered observation, every private acknowledgement, every shared opinion about you has consequences that extend far beyond mere words. Those discussions don't just stay in the air. They trigger unseen systems of protection around you. Forces, spiritual, human, or both. Take note when someone of significance is recognized before they even realize their own power. Conversations about you, whether in admiration or fear, act like flags, markers, or alerts. They signal to higher guardians, this one carries impact. Do not allow sabotage. Do not allow derailment. Preserve them. Even the smallest room, the quietest meeting, or the most distant observer contributes to a network that shields you. The more your reputation, gifts, and influence are noted, even in places you can't see, the stronger the protective mechanisms around your life become. People's acknowledgement of you, whether conscious or unconscious, reinforces the reality that you cannot be interfered with, that your trajectory is monitored, guided, and guarded. You may go through life thinking your achievements are quiet or unnoticed, but in reality, your name echoes in rooms you haven't entered yet. Those echoes matter. They protect you. They ensure your assignments are intact. They maintain your path, keeping interference at bay until your purpose is ready to manifest fully. Your significance has already been recognized before you even walk into the room. Number 14. They're protecting you because someone already tried to imitate you and failed miserably. There are people who watched your life from a distance and thought they could copy what you carry. They studied your personality, your gifts, your tone, your resilience, your ideas, your uniqueness, thinking it was something they could duplicate like a style, a habit, or a trend. But what they didn't understand is that you're not operating from personality alone. You're operating from spiritual imprint. Your life is not a formula, it's a frequency, and frequencies cannot be forged. Someone tried to step into your lane thinking it was empty. They tried to mirror your strengths, your creativity, your inner power, even your path. They tried to walk with your confidence, speak with your insight, move with your depth. The more they tried to copy you, the more they fell apart. They didn't just fail because they lacked skill. They failed because they lacked permission. They attempted to wear an identity that wasn't assigned to them. That failure triggered a reaction in higher realms. When someone attempts to impersonate a chosen one, it becomes a spiritual violation. It sets off alarms, it draws attention, and the forces assigned to protect you step forward to guard the blueprint, the origin, from distortion, theft, or contamination. You became protected not because you were threatened, but because the attempt exposed how irreplaceable you truly are. Imitations collapse because they cannot carry the weight you carry. They don't have your endurance, your intuition, your spiritual backing, or your calling. They cannot walk with the same authority because they don't share your covenant. They try to replicate your outcomes without surviving your battles. They try to mimic your glow without enduring your process. And when they fail, they don't just get frustrated, they get bitter. That bitterness is what turns into envy, sabotage, or silent hostility. That shift, from imitation to envy, is exactly why the protection around you intensified. Higher forces know that envy is dangerous when it's coming from someone who once admired you. They know that jealousy breeds chaos when it's coming from someone who tried to be you but couldn't. So they guard you, they shield you, they ensure the original stays intact, elevated, and inaccessible to those trying to copy your spiritual fingerprint. No one protects a copy, only the original gets security. Conclusion. Every detail we've explored today points to one undeniable truth. You are not walking through life by accident. You are not just surviving. You are being protected, guided and guarded because you are chosen, marked, and essential in ways that go far beyond ordinary comprehension. The world may have tried to test you, imitate you, break you, or manipulate your path, but every attempt only highlighted your resilience, your purpose, and the significance of your presence. Higher forces, spiritual, human, and unseen, have stepped in to ensure that nothing, no one, and no circumstance derails the destiny embedded in your existence. From your intuition that reads hidden motives, to your calmness that exposes corruption without a word, to the way your life resonates like a pattern others cannot replicate, every aspect of you has been noticed, catalogued, and protected. Your breakthroughs, your comebacks, your influence, and your unseen impact are far more powerful than the world can measure. People who observed you in silence have reported what they discovered. They saw your uniqueness, your strength, and your authority, and it terrified them. That alarm triggered intervention, ensuring your path remains intact and your purpose unfolds on time without disruption. You are being watched over not because you are fragile or weak, but because you are dangerous to falsehood, manipulation, and stagnation. You carry a calling that affects generations, a destiny that cannot be interrupted, and a spiritual rank recognized even in realms you've never visited. Imitations have tried to steal what is inherently yours, only to fail and reveal how irreplaceable the original is. Your life, your journey, and your assignments are being guarded because the ripple effect of your existence must reach its intended destinations, alive, whole, and unhindered. This is not a story of luck or coincidence. This is a story of purpose, divine design, and precise protection. It's proof that even in moments when life seems uncertain or hostile, there are forces actively ensuring that your impact is preserved, that your breakthroughs are celebrated, and that your true potential is never derailed. You are untouchable not because you asked for it, but because the universe knows your significance. Every step you take, every challenge you overcome, every person you inspire is a testament to the fact that your presence matters immensely and irrevocably. If this message resonated with you, make sure you take action to join our community. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss a deep dive into truths that reveal your power. Like this video to show your support. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, and comment below to share your experiences. Your journey is extraordinary, and it deserves to be witnessed, celebrated, and amplified. Stay aware, stay protected, and remember, you are far more significant than anyone around you realizes. God bless you.